Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another EA Zoom meeting. My name is Tara All, and I am excited today, extra excited today, because I have been working on a series over the past, I think more than a year now, called We Are the Planets. And so, and there's a playlist on EA Zoom YouTube channel for this, but we are down to, this is the second to the last meeting for We Are the Planet. So we're doing your Chiron today, and then I think it's November that we do the final one, which is the sun. So this has been a project that I've been working on for a period of time, and all the volunteers have been joining me periodically. So yeah, it feels like we're kind of reaching a culmination. So I'm happy that you're here tuning in whenever it is that you're here with us. So let's just jump right in. Okay, before we get into Chiron specifically, this whole meeting and this whole series of meetings, this whole series of We Are the Planets, Astrology as a Living Meditation, is really based on a technique that I've been working with now for a number of years called choosing planets first, or planets on the first. And planets on the first, many of you have heard this before, but this intro is important for anyone tuning in who hasn't watched any of these videos. So choosing a planet first is not new. It's been a technique that's been around for a long time, but I haven't seen, at least in my years with astrology, seen it really brought up to the forefront. One of my teachers a number of years ago brought it up to me as a suggestion to work with when I was really struggling with getting out of my head and being more in my heart space. I have a South Node in Gemini, so I have a tendency to intellectualize things a lot. And at the time, it was Adam Gainsburg who said, you should try this technique, planets on the first, where you essentially, you pick a planet that you want to live through. And in this context, we're talking about planets each representing a part inside of our psyche, right? So we all have a Mercury, we all have a Venus, we all have a Jupiter, we all have a Pluto down the list. And so with planets first, you pick one. You pick the one that you want to have basically be the focalizing crystal or the lens through which you experience your life. So it's an intentional choice to bring out a certain part of yourself with the use of astrology. The chart part itself, we're not going to get into here. I have other videos on that specifically on this channel if you want to find them. But like, for example, I use Solar Fire program, and right where you would choose the house system, like Porphyry or Placidus, you can literally choose Venus first, Mercury first. And what it does is it takes the chart you're working with, and it just rotates that planet you choose to the ascendant. So the signs that planets are in, the relationships they're in don't change, but where things are by house change. The idea here is that you pick a planet and move it to the ascendant to intentionally live it first, to experience it through your kind of walking, breathing, moving identity. So one of the things, and this is for now a number of years now, I have been choosing one planet each year on my birthday and spending a whole year with it. There's no prescription for like what this needs to look like. Some people do it for a week, some people do it for a month, some people, not interested at all. But for me, I would pick a planet each year on my birthday and really intentionally go through that next year with, for example, if I choose Venus first, which is the first planet I ever did 5 or 6 years ago, I spent that year. What is Venus in me like? What choices do I make when Venus is first? What is the Venus part of me? How does that Venus part see this conversation, this thing I'm doing, the way these pants feel on my body, right? Kind of all these things from a Venusian perspective. For me, that first year kind of blew my whole world wide open. I'm an Aries rising, so Mars rules my chart. So the Venus way of approaching each moment wasn't necessarily what I was used to. And it showed me new parts of me, not really new because they're in there, but new relationships I had with parts within myself. So this is awesome. Like if you're working with yourself or clients, let's say that they're having a hard time setting boundaries, getting things done. Maybe they're just like struggling with responsibility. Well, we all know that's Saturn stuff, right? So choosing Saturn first and working with Saturn first can be a great way to develop a new relationship with that for yourself. I also like this technique, and it's interesting because my partner and I have been reading out loud Mr. Rogers at bedtime lately, which in contrast, I got to tell you, we're also watching right now the Walking Dead series. And so it's like, I'm literally like, we'll watch that and then we turn it off and then read Mr. Rogers. So that gives you a little peek into my own self here. But Mr. Rogers talks about, like, and if any of you remember Mr. Rogers in his Make Believe or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, one of the thing about all those different characters was that it allowed you to sort of access parts of yourself vicariously a little bit through something else, right? So you could experience your anger through someone else in the neighborhood having their anger. I was thinking about this recently, that planets on the first gives us a little bit of that. We're still owning it and being it, but it also helps us separate just a little bit, maybe from things like, let's just say that I wasn't used to living my Mars, and anger was something I wasn't comfortable with. Planets first gives me a little bit of more agency to say, oh, let me just test that part out and look at that part out. It's almost like it gives a little safety zone for playing around with it, and then to let it come inside within myself. It's almost like having our own, terrace inside neighborhood. Let's knock on the door and see how Mr. Such and Such is doing today. Now, I know that all these parts are me, but I'm saying sometimes for us to be comfortable, to get really vulnerable, we need a little bit of separation. It's what we do all the time, right? We talk about projection, all these things, that's what we're doing. So these are just some ideas. If you're interested in Planets First more, you can either reach out to me or check out my website. Let's keep on going. So astrology, I have such an interesting relationship with astrology. What I mean by this is, like, I love astrology, really. Like, it's opened my heart and my mind in ways that I didn't have before. But there are other times where I feel like astrology closes the door, meaning we just start looking at the chart and signatures and we get stuck in that and we forget to actually live. Or people will come to us like in a client session or something and ask, well, do you think my chart says I can be a musician? And I just want to say, you don't need your chart to tell you what you can be, right? The chart can be helpful, but at the same time, if we look at the chart too much as some sort of like, this is what I am, or this is what I can do, we kind of sell ourselves short, right? So I kind of hold everything with astrology a little bit loosely, meaning just because someone has a certain aspect or certain placement in their chart, we have no idea how they're going to live that placement or that part of themselves. And I think it's important that we always remember that. Astrology is not really in your chart, right? It's you. Like, astrology is just a language of energy. Some of us were chatting before this meeting started about astrology and, how much we actually know about it and how much we can contribute to conversations. And what I always say is that astrology isn't something that any of us don't know. We all know it. It literally is how we're living. And astrology is not a belief system, right? So when people say things like, well, do you really believe in that stuff? Or there's nothing to believe in. We just observe it. We watch a fire and it's hot. It doesn't require a belief. It's observation, right? We're watching it happen. And astrology, the way we practice it, gives us words, concepts, and understandings to help us understand what is already there. But the energy of life, natural law, that already exists anyway. So, like, I meet lots of people, for example, that I can have a conversation with them and I'll be like, wow, everything you just said was Sagittarius. They don't know that word, but they clearly know Sagittarius zone, right? This is kind of what I'm saying with it. And for me, very much, the as above, so below, as within, as without, which again is one of the turn-ons for me with working with planets first. It's remembering that, the moon isn't just happening up in our sky. It's reflecting what's happening inside. There's a relationship always between the two. And so when we choose to live the planet first, like I was saying before, we activate a certain part of our nature. It's not that it wasn't there. But most of us have like go-to ways of living, right? And we probably, if I asked, everybody here right now, if we had time to stop and I said, hey, kind of what's your go-to mode for living? We all know what that is pretty much. It doesn't mean that all the other things aren't in there, but we get used to doing it like the Saturn way, or we get used to always compromising the Venus way, or we get used to always being the one who is a little unusual and has to, break outside the rules like the Uranus way. This is just picking something, and in particular, something that we haven't chosen as often. So it's just looking at yourself from a different perspective. I like this theory of a house. Like, if I'm a house and I'm made up of all these rooms and a barn out back and all this stuff, if I've always stayed in the kitchen of myself, it's not that the bathroom isn't there or that there's not, a swimming pool down on the basement floor or something outside. It's just that I haven't been going there. And so this is what I try to give myself with planets first. Move to go, space to move and go to those different places. So Again, we're not really changing anything. We're just tuning into what's there, but that changes everything. And this is just a quick thank you in particular. I mean, I already mentioned Adam Gainsburg because he is the one who turned me on to the technique Planets First. But also this in particular, we're going to talk about Chiron today and the part of us that we call Chiron. And Adam, his work around Chiron, in particular, his book called Chiron, The Wisdom of a Deeply Open Heart, it is a big part of where I have, at least a big part of the foundation of where I've taken some of my material from, and some of his explorations and understandings of Chiron have really resonated with me. So I just want to offer that here. And, you know, and it's not even just Adam, right? I always want to say, like, I'm thankful to so many astrologers that I continue to learn from and have learned from, right? There's nothing that I do that isn't part of our collective, and I'm thankful. So let's briefly talk about Chiron mythology. And I'm going to try to curb myself to no longer than to 2:30 here, or to a half hour, because it's the volunteer part that's the best. So if for some reason I don't get through everything, you'll see me skip through. It's because I think the volunteer part's more important. But let's talk briefly here about the mythology of Chiron, because to understand Chiron and kind of how we are talking about Chiron in the birth chart and as an archetype inside of ourselves, we need to kind of know where that comes from. So Chiron was the son of Kronos, so also what we call Saturn, and his mother was Philyra. She was a sea nymph, and Saturn desired Philyra. Like, he was super attracted to her, and she had no interest in him whatsoever. So she turned into a mare. She turned into a mare to try to escape his advances. But as the story goes, Saturn just turned himself into a stallion, and then he had his way with her, and that's how we end up with Chiron. So Chiron was born a centaur. When he comes out, half human, half horse. And his mother, she was so disgusted with him that she literally just abandoned him immediately. She wanted nothing else to do with him. And Saturn was long gone before. You know, he just wanted what he wanted. So here we have Chiron, you know, unwanted by both parents, comes out this weird combination of both parents. And, but the happy part of the story is that Apollo at that time, who the god of healing and poetry, music, prophecy, the sun god, as we know Apollo to be, raised Chiron and taught him everything he knew. So there's this sort of element of, my parents don't want me, but this god really is interested in me and wants me. So it's right from the beginning, we can see that they're already, we'll get there, but let me just leave it at that. So Chiron was a centaur, but not born of centaurs. So he didn't even really belong to his own kind. Now, there are lots of stories that talk about Chiron having human front legs and having the horse's rear legs. You know, with mythology, you can take or leave whatever it is you want. You can probably find, we can always find pretty much whatever story we want to kind of support which direction fits for us. But the point here is that Chiron was different, and different even from the centaurs. And because he was born of Saturn, he was immortal. And this is an important part as we go on. Now, Chiron, as we know, became a very famous healer. You know, we call Chiron the father of medicine. He was an astrologer. So any of us who are interested in astrology, you know, there's a natural affinity for Chiron. He was a teacher. He mentored, you know, many of the sons of kings and Greek heroes. So like Achilles and Hercules are ones that we know famously that he taught them. But Chiron's wound, and it's funny when we say Chiron's wound, it's not just the wound that he then later received in his leg that we'll talk about, but part of it is that wound of separation from the very beginning of his birth, of not being connected with where he came from, which is kind of what Chiron, how it manifests for all of us on some level. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but it's an archetype of separation, how we feel separate, how we don't feel connected. But as the story goes, one of Hercules' arrows that was poisoned with the Hydra's blood, it accidentally pierced Chiron's leg, and it inflicted this eternal, incurable wound. And no matter what Chiron did to try to heal it, even though, I mean, at the time, he was like the amazing healer, right? He was able to heal all kinds of things for all kinds of people, but he couldn't cure that wound. Now, at the same time, Prometheus had given fire to us humans, which was a great sacrifice, and he was being punished for it. And so he was hung up on this rock, And then essentially, I forget if it's every morning or yeah, every morning an eagle would come and eat out his liver. And because he's immortal, the liver would grow back every night to repeat. And then the eagle comes back and eats out his liver again. So he's going through this huge punishment for bringing us fire. And the only way he could be released from his punishment is if an immortal would take his place. And at that point, no one had stepped up to, you know, I would imagine there wasn't a long line of people waiting for that. So ultimately, Chiron volunteered to replace Prometheus. And what Chiron saw in this is that his suffering could serve a purpose. So he could relieve Prometheus, but also if he took that position, he would lose his immortality and he would eventually die. And Chiron was in a lot of pain. So there was this sort of combination of helping Prometheus by freeing him and reaching a solution where he could finally be released from his own eternal suffering. And at the time, Zeus, Jupiter, was so impressed that after 9 days of Chiron being, you know, up taking that punishment up, chained up to that rock, he released Chiron into the stars as a constellation Centaurus. So that's how we know the story to go. One thing that's important, and Chiron teaches us this, that being healthy or healing does not mean not hurting. I think oftentimes we think about that, well, if I'm really healthy and nothing will hurt, right? Or or a healing process shouldn't include hurt. Hurting is part of being human. And I think that the more that we can kind of come to a new relationship with that, it helps us, not just in what we're calling Chiron work here, but just in being human beings, right? Hurting is human. And even this whole idea of things being a wound, that's language we've put around things. It's always important, I feel like, especially these days, even more and more with myself, to remind myself that, yes, this whole talk, we're talking about woundedness, right? And digging into our most vulnerable wounds and discovering our own medicine in it. But we've given it those words. We've given it that meaning. What if what we're calling woundedness was something entirely different? You know, what if it was cotton candy? I'm just saying we truly are meaning making machines. And so that is not going to stop me from moving forward with how we look at this, but it does make me just kind of pause somewhere in my head. I leave room, which I always think is important in life. So Chiron in astronomy, discovered November 1st, 1977. And if you go Google's, even to this day, we still aren't exactly sure, at least people can't 100% agree on what it is. Is it a meteor? Is it an asteroid? Is it a comet? It takes about 50 years to orbit the sun, and it spends almost half of its time in Aries and Pisces. That's its most common signs. It has this very eccentric orbit between Saturn and Uranus. So one of the reasons why it looks like a comet is when it gets further out by Uranus, it gets much colder. As it comes in closer towards Saturn, part of it starts to melt, which gives it a look like it has a tail, right? Like it's a comet. But this orbit is an important piece here. And it's interesting, you guys, that I actually signed up. Stephen Forrest today is also doing a Chiron little workshop, like for $25 you can purchase or whatnot. I haven't watched it yet, but I purchased it. And I thought it was very interesting that these are happening today. And in the sky today, we have, it's not quite exact yet, but it's Chiron Sun opposition. So it's a really good time for us being open to being more aware about Chiron, literally Chiron, like bringing itself into our field of awareness. So just an extra big, I always like it when the things align and we don't plan them that way, you just happen to notice. But this eccentric orbit between Saturn and Uranus, Chiron literally comes just inside Saturn's orbit, closer to the sun than Saturn by a little bit, and it goes just outside Uranus's orbit. So we look at Chiron as an energetic bridge. As the rainbow bridge, the bridge between the known and the unknown, the bridge between the body mind and the non-local mind, right? So this whole idea of bridging between things, Chiron is very much a bridge archetype. And we can see that even in its orbit, which I think is really cool. So some Chiron correspondences. Separation. So, and I want to offer this. Polarities always apply. So if Chiron is the archetype of separation, it's also the archetype of connection. We just tend to experience it initially more as the separation, but you can't, there's not a front without a back, right? And we know this with every other polarity that we work with in astrology. So this idea of separation, though, Chiron represents, at least, in the natal chart, our relationship with the archetype of separation and how we keep ourselves separate, or how we think somehow we're missing something that everybody else has. We're broken in a way that nobody else is, right? Something about us doesn't work right and it works right for everybody else. We feel different that way. Thinking back to Chiron's myth, you can see how this gets pulled in here. We can also look at Chiron as the higher octave of the moon. So you may be familiar with the octave. So for example, we would say Venus being personal love, the higher octave is Neptune, right? Transpersonal or unconditional love. Well, some of us look at Chiron as the higher octave of the moon being our, like the separate identity, the ego part of ourselves that we create, our more reactive emotional selves. And Chiron is the conscious engagement of our separation. If the moon represents how we've created a separate identity, Chiron is how we consciously engage that we have created that, and brings a level of emotional maturity. And another thing you can look at is, if you're into the tarot at all, the Hierophant, Major Arcana 5, it's associated with both Taurus and Chiron. That card in particular is about spiritual learning and teaching in and through physical form, which is so much of what Chiron is. This is why Chiron is open heart. It's vulnerable work. It's being human, being in our body. It's not transcending and leaving to go to some spiritual realm to heal or find something. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I'm just saying the Chiron way is in and through. And the Hierophant card, in fact, all the fives in the tarot, and for those of you who know, fives are not easy in the tarot. Those are tough cards. And part of that is because they represent the integration of the 4 basic elements plus spirit. And that includes the integration of our humanity with divinity. And we usually experience that as difficult, right? When spirit meets matter, there's a negotiation. We have to somehow have an integration with that. The bound self that has flesh and limitations as we experience ourselves versus, our limitless self. The fives are about those coming together. So, it's kind of awkward. It's a struggle. Not bad, a big point of learning, which is why that Hierophant card is so much about spiritual learning and teaching. And then one of my favorite correspondences for Chiron is the Anahata, or the heart chakra. So the heart chakra, Anahata in Sanskrit means unstruck, unhurt, untouched. And it is at the heart chakra, at the Anahata, that we choose the path. And if you pull up a diagram anywhere of the 7 basic chakras, you can see 4, of course, it's right in the middle at the heart. It's the crossing point between animality, everything below, and divinity up above. It's not making one better or worse. It's about a choice point. At the heart is where we choose. Do we submit to our lower nature, or do we become more self-aware and open to that more spiritual sense of what we are? And Chiron, like we just talked about being that rainbow bridge, Chiron is a big part of this process. Chiron and the Anahata chakra represent decision power that comes from the heart, the empowered heart, the open, empowered heart. And from this space, we can choose and experience union with all parts of ourselves in life. So there's that polarity again to separation. We can't really discover unity or connection without playing around with separation. You just, we need both sides to get it. Authentic kindness also sits here. And what I mean by authentic kindness is not, just being super sugary nice to people. Authentic kindness is being, honest and caring, but really being present for what the moment is bringing. Sometimes the kindest thing, for example, is to be with someone while they go through something difficult without trying to do something about it, right? We're very quick to think about kindness as somehow fixing, helping in a way of sort of making something better. But when we get too much down that path, what we're essentially saying is that there's something wrong with what's happening. So what I'm calling authentic kindness is showing up in the moment as honestly as you can, being with yourself, you know, in a mature way, and being present to be with others as they go through what they're going through. And you have to follow your heart to know when there's something for you to do. The Antakarana is another word that we can use for this rainbow bridge. And if you're interested in these things, you can Google them later. But this is all really, Antakarana is about the integration of the higher and lower self, or the higher and lower mind. It's how we literally integrate those parts of ourselves. And if you're interested in esoteric astrology, all this comes up more often as well. But all of this we've been talking about here about the rainbow bridge, right? This whole idea of this bridging of myself so that I get more of me, right? The idea of the bridge is like not to move from one place to the other. It's to get more of all of me, right? The bridge is not about leaving a lower self to the higher self. It's literally about opening a channel for all of it. And again, it means it's all about being you, being more you. I feel like Chiron is like, I don't know, we sometimes call Chiron the maverick, but I feel like, I know Uranus is very much about authenticity, but Chiron, I feel as well, it's like, it's the part of us that wants us to be what we are. And that requires like being honest with what's going on and what's in. So just a couple of things here. You are the experience and you are wholeness. So you are the space and you're also filling it, right? Wherever Chiron is by sign and by house, it gives you an idea of where and how you can choose things inside or out that help you be more wholly you. It's a great way to look and see, hey, kind of what part of life can I engage with to give myself more me? And what you separate from, just in general, anything you push away, right? Something happens, I don't like that, or that's somebody else's problem, or whatever it is, including anything that you consider to be your enemies, and not just people, but anything in life that you have an aversion towards, that has some of the best medicine for you. So don't be too quick to push it away. It's one of the best teachers we have. Whenever you make something an it, including when you talk about yourself, you know, like let's just say I'm talking about my emotional self, I really need to give it room to express. When I do that, I keep it separate from me. It's not that that's a problem, but if I want more wholeness, really great language is to right as soon as I say the it, change that. Oh, I need to make room for me versus an it that I have separated a part of me. So this is just something I've noticed with myself. You know, we have a tendency to talk about things as it's. Not that it's all me, right? It's all me. It's not, I don't need to deal with that. I need to deal with me. Chiron is the part of you that knows it's all you. Everything. It's all you. And it wants you to welcome it all back home. Okay, I think we just have a couple. Oh no. Okay, good. We're at 2:30, but this will be fast. Chiron by sign, because this part's important, right? When we launch into volunteers. Chiron by sign, the way that I work with it, the way that I learned it, the sign that your Chiron is in is the nature of the wound. So signs represent how we are evolving. And signs represent energy that, like, it's what motivates us, what our agendas are, what our attitudes are, the quality of our nature. And signs reflect why and how we do things. You know, like if you have a sun in Cancer, on some level, everything you do is going to come back on some level to emotional connection, emotional security, right? That's going to be there. Even if it's in the 9th house and you're off on a crazy traveling vacation doing it, right? Because the sign is why and how you do things. So again, Chiron by sign is the nature of the wounding itself, where you believe there's something really wrong with yourself, where you believe you're broken and it can't be fixed. And Adam calls this the sacred wound. So I've picked that up for myself. The sign that your Chiron is in represents the sacred wound. By house. Houses are the where and what types of things that are happening and what we're doing. And if you haven't played around with this, and just by the way, just so you know here, I'm the EA way, and I am an evolutionary astrologer. The EA way is to look at like a planet in a sign and a planet in a house, very similar. And what I'm offering here is that I do look at them with a distinction. Don't worry about this if you haven't looked at it this way, but I'm just offering this here because this is an EA meeting. But for me, over time, I have come to realize that there are subtle differences between a planet being in a sign and a house, and that has enriched and added to my understanding of my own chart and my clients and the people that I'm working with. So where the sign is what motivates you and why you do things, the house that something is in shows what types of things are happening and what you're doing through your evolution of consciousness. So houses are areas of life, circumstances, experiences. They're like life classrooms. When it comes down to it, they feel a lot the same, right? Like what we're doing and why we're doing it, sometimes in the moment, it's pretty hard to tell the difference. But Chiron by house is the area of life where your wound is triggered. So you can think about the sign Chiron is in as the core wound itself, and the house your Chiron is in is the area of life that will trigger that wound. And I don't have this in this presentation here, but what I always like to talk about is if you really want to open your Chiron wound and you really want to get in there and work the medicine, choose the house that Chiron is in, choose more experiences in your life that are associated with that house. If your Chiron is in the 5th house, tell a joke, even if you don't know if everybody will laugh. You know, find a way to get on a little stage somewhere, right? Find a way to express your creativity. Do things in the 5th house because they're likely to trigger the wound, and that lets you go straight in to the medicine. It won't feel comfortable, but it's the way in. It's like, instead of waiting for life to break you open, choose it. You know, I'm going to go to that zone, and your relationship with it will entirely change, by the way. Like once you start doing that for a while, it will no longer feel that same way, because it's actually not a weak spot. That's just our perception and our belief about it initially. Okay, so when you're thinking about your personal Chiron zone, you know, you can be thinking about like, what is it for me? Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Kind of what music would be like the soundtrack for my Chiron. I think about for myself sometimes, like with Chiron, I need the most courage to, you know, fill in the blank. I'm afraid to be vulnerable about fill in the blank. What really opens your heart? And then another thing that helps me is thinking my past hurts and weaknesses help me support others when it comes to fill in the blank. These are ways you can sort of engage that Chiron first type of energy. So you get in that zone. Well, what does it look like for me? And as I never get tired of this quote for Chiron, Rumi, the cure for pain is in the pain, right? And that's really what we're doing with Chiron, is like we're choosing what we've called pain and we're changing our relationship with it, because it's the medicine, it's the same thing. That's why the cure for the pain is in the pain. All right, so we're ready for volunteers. I now put my contact information here if you want to get a hold of me first, because I never remember once we start with volunteers. So here it is if anybody wants it. And then I just quickly want to thank all the EA Zoom volunteers. I mean, all you guys who are here today, but just everybody, because I've been doing this for a lot of years now, you know, with Linda, you know, leading the whole show, and the volunteers, I mean, it's huge. I get so much feedback, just so you guys know, from my own, you know, from clients and people that I work with, that they say how meaningful it is to hear other people's real experiences of things, not just watching slides, but hearing people and their real lives and what really happens. And that doesn't happen without, you know, you guys being willing to really share in a super honest way too, right? So thank you. I appreciate it. And I know that lots of people do. Eve, I know you have to leave early, so we are starting with you.
Great. Good. Hey, Tara. Hey, guys.
Hey, and Eve, for anybody, just because I know a lot of people don't watch, they listen. So let's just give a brief little, you've got Pluto in the 9th house, in Libra, conjunct Mercury. You have, let's see, Aquarius rising. You've got South Node in Taurus in the 4th house. North Node in Scorpio conjunct the moon in the 10th house. Uranus is on your midheaven. And your Chiron is in the 3rd house, conjunct Jupiter. They are both retrograde in Aries.
Yeah.
And they are opposing Uranus, and actually they're making a whole bunch of aspects. So you've got Chiron is trine Venus. Venus is in Leo. It is square Saturn. Saturn is in Cancer. It is quincunx, or in conjunct the North Node, which is always interesting to me to look at. And one of the notes I put down here before I shut up and let you share for a second here is that when someone has a lot of aspects, Chiron aspects like Eve does, it means Chiron's a big part of the karmic and evolutionary journey. So like for some people, one way that you can kind of know whether talking about Chiron's going to hit home, look and see if there's very many Chiron aspects. Because remember, aspects are like conversations. If in this case for Eve, Chiron's talking to everybody, you know, or at least to a lot of it. So we know right away that, and it's interesting to say that Chiron's talking to everybody because that it's in the third house. So we know that there's issues about, you know, communication anyway. So Eve, what would you say just to begin with? Like maybe you could just share sort of what your relationship is with Chiron. And I'm specifically interested, before we get in further, has it felt more of an ally or more of a challenge?
Wow, probably more of an ally, to be honest. Yeah. I my life from the outside in if you looked at it, would seem fairly straightforward, and you know, no major trauma to speak of, pretty cruisy as far as life circumstance. But on the inside, and what's been going on with me, it's just like it feels like it's been challenge after challenge, but also too, like it feels like they have, I've really had this, I don't know if it's the Jupiter, but this ability to see them as a gift my whole life, you know. And really easy to go to those deep dark places, really can easily be with my pain and seem to be able to hold others in it. So yeah, it's kind of that dual sword, like challenging, but always a gift at the end of the day. Yeah.
Eve, I think you hit on such a good point, because conjunctions for me are kind of like wild cards, meaning
Yeah.
like sometimes conjunctions people experience them to be very, you know, stressful. Other times the two planets literally like come together and coalesce in this beautiful way, and so we never know until like we're talking to the person what that conjunction is going to feel like. So so there's just, let me see, I have so many little notes down here. I wondered about, because Pluto in the ninth house, so much is about truth, right? And you've got that conjunct Mercury. So even the idea of what you think is the truth or what you've been told is the truth, or and you guys also, she's got Mars in Gemini conjunct Ceres, which brings more, like there's so many different elements to me around either past grief or even like trauma or issues around being able or not being able to say what you really want to say, being able to get it across. Like, are you saying it right? Are you just supposed to say it the way everybody wants to hear it? You know, and so I would love to hear you share a little more, because I feel like there's so much medicine in this, for not just for you to on the inside have those experiences, but to share them like with
totally.
us.
And it was so funny. I'm really, you know, learning about the teacher of the moment, and even just coming in to share today and you know, and share about my truth of my, like, just the anxiety of like, will people understand? Will it make sense? Will I articulate it how it is true for me? You know, it's just that taking life and my understandings and what I know to be true and expressing them, and the fear of them not being understood, has played out my whole life. And I've kind of gone from being an extremely shy, quiet child to learning to, these days, like I do speak up poetry. I'm very comfortable presenting, but there's still this underlying hesitancy to step into my power and my truth. Like I still don't feel like I've figured it out. I know what it is, that I'll ever know what it is. And every time I articulate it, it shifts and changes, right? So I can't nail it down. And that's been one of my biggest anxieties and woundings around, you know, around that. So, yeah.
Do you feel like, because I know, you know, with I mean, certainly with Pluto conjunct Mercury in Libra, like there's a refined nature to that. What I mean by that is, like, you know, being put together, being presentable, kind of knowing where it's going to go. You know, Libra, it's funny. We talk about appropriateness with Capricorn a lot, but I feel like Libra also has a lot of appropriateness. And to me, some of the medicine of Aries is just to actually not know where it's going to go. Right?
Yeah.
Because Aries is all about, like, I mean, at one point, one of my teachers was Adam Gainsburg. He had mentioned, he's like, Aries is streaming consciousness. Like there is no past or future. Like, you know, it's like literally just what's happening in the moment. So you couldn't possibly know with Aries, like, and in the third house, which is also, you know, being willing to, being open to whatever path it would go. Right. So there's kind of this combination, I feel like, with that of being, and here's the funny part, like, so I have Chiron and Aries too, like, and it's funny because I also had like that bit of performance thing you talked about, and I worry sometimes about, will I come across the right way or whatnot, and what part of my practice more and more has become to try to not make that a problem, and just to tell myself that's fine, but I'm gonna share it anyway, you know, or that's fine, I'm gonna do it anyway. And that's such good Chiron and Aries medicine, to just, I'm going to follow my instincts and do it, and in the third house and say it, even while it's scary, and having no idea where it's going to land. Right.
It's going to land.
Yeah. Because Libra is always trying to predict, like, Libra's trying to, like, if you and I are having a conversation, I know if it was me, I would already be trying to figure out like how you would respond if I say it. Right. And I was like, and Aries, like, just it's not interested in that business. So there's such a freedom. Yeah. There's freedom in that.
And a lot of where I've come to with my work now, a lot of what I do, and the most joy and freedom I find is in, like, channeling messages, intuitive messaging, channeling. And this, I've always had this constant complaint my whole life too, that I can't, my memories are just terrible. Like, I can't remember anything. I can't remember philosophies, ideas, like, it's just, I can't hold stuff in my brain. So, you know, I've spent years, like, learning all different modalities, and I can learn them but never seem to master them. And there's this medicine for me around letting it all go, and just allowing whatever wants to come through that keeps. And when I do that, I feel free and aligned. And when I try and, you know, figure it out and, like, articulate and, like, you know, package it and remember that thing and archetype it, and it just goes pear-shaped. Yeah.
What else do you think? So, and also, so there's a lot of us, like, it's like a big generation of us has the Chiron Uranus opposition going on. But, and so I've been thinking about that, because I mean, I have it too. So I you know, think about, well, what does that actually mean? And I was listening to something recently, and they talked about it being like a breakthrough of the deepest systemic wounds, right? Because Uranus holds, you know, collective memory, right? It holds a whole lot of memories in there. So I feel like that for any of us that have that there is that it's, and I think that everyone's personal healing contributes to all of our healing. So I don't say this to exclude that, but I feel like this aspect in particular, especially with Chiron and Aries, the more that you can be just present and open to you, just being you in that moment without knowing where it's going to go, that you can free yourself in that way, that it literally, like, repatterns what we would call history. Like, even at a cellular level, like, the energy can literally shift that way. And so I think it's a powerful thing. And so when you were talking about, I forget the words you used, but about, like, kind of just downloading information or getting kind of psychic information. I mean, Uranus opposing Chiron, I feel like that's part of it too. And a lot of that information could be very healing information. Like, what's needed for healing, which doesn't have to be, you know, a tincture someone should take, but it could just be an attitude, you know, or just whatever it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now, it's, for me, it's about trusting my coming back, and, like, that Aries, Chiron and Aries and communication, like, trusting my own truth, my own understanding, and that's enough. And that it is the medicine that, that is here for me, but also for others. And that, feels like definitely the training ground, and then just speaking it, sharing it, and not, judging, checking that it's going, like you said, just like, this is it,
Yeah, because how it lands is somebody else's business. It's not, I mean, that's,
Totally.
yeah, I mean, it's easy to say it, not so easy actually,
Yeah.
but it's the same thing when we say what someone says about us behind our back is their business too, like,
Yeah.
I was thinking too, when you were speaking, that Jupiter in particular is a planet very much of intuition, right? And
Yeah.
so, and you've got it retrograde. So Jupiter retrograde, no matter what sign it's in, is about reclaiming confidence in our intuition, reclaiming confidence in what we just know intuitively.
Yeah.
And Chiron and Aries in particular, this can have to do with like trusting the body, literally trusting like the signals and the instincts that come through, your, and even your physical body. So there's a
And
lot.
it's so funny, because one of the programs that I'm just developing to share with people is all about learning to tune into your intuition through the body, like using the senses. So it's like,
so you're telling,
you
so
just
you're, so you're told, I mean,
exactly.
so this is so great, because like you are literally that, like you are being and doing the medicine. And I also think one thing, it's not just with Aries, but I feel especially with Aries, but with everybody, that we don't have to we don't have to be all the way there to be offering the medicine, and I think it's also to give ourselves permission too, that when we're really being as open and honest and growing ourselves the best we can, we will have the right thing to offer, and the right people will come to get it at the right time. And we don't have to worry so much about it being, we don't have to worry about the rest of it so much. There's so much about Aries that is just not worrying so much. It's funny.
Yeah.
I don't think I've said that about Aries before, but it's like, heck, I'm just going to do it, like it doesn't, there's not and having the courage to just do it. And even if it's clumsy, right? Because there's a clumsiness to Aries.
Yeah.
And so
I'm definitely very clumsy. Yeah.
Oh, is there anything else that you feel like I know we didn't talk a lot about, so let's just briefly talk about Chiron, Quincunx, and North Node, because Quincunx are in conjunct for me. So I'm always interested in the North Node because of course it's the evolutionary path, right? So any planet that you've got in aspect to the North Node is literally like your ally, like linked arms on your evolutionary journey. And the same with anything that's aspecting the South Node, that was linking arms in karmically, like, in your karmic history. So in this case, Chiron is here with a North Node, but it's Quincunx, which means there has to be an adjustment, right? Quincunx, things don't work well together naturally. Like they have to work something out. There has to be like some negotiation or some adjustment. Quincunx, no matter what we're working with, has a Virgo type feel to it. Just the aspect has a Virgo essence to it. So it's like figuring out how that Chiron and Aries can work with a North Node in Scorpio conjunct the moon. And conjunct the moon, right? So there's that. And I wondered if you thought about that, or if you had any reflections on that.
Not really. I hadn't really noticed the Chiron, that aspect to the Scorpio moon and my North Node. But as far as adjusting, and I've got my sun in Virgo too, so like I'm really familiar with that, just things needing to be, and that's definitely a piece of it too. Like I can never, I find it really hard to settle, to be fully accepting of the moment, and like really be here now. I'm always adjusting, tweaking, how could we do so there's always that energy of never being able to rest. That's probably Aries as well, but that fast pace.
I wonder if, because I'm thinking, because here's that Chiron and Aries, right? Chiron and Aries trying to like negotiate somehow how to work with the North Node in Scorpio, meaning trying to find a way to negotiate to help you move in your evolution, right? To like literally, it's like an ally, right? How is it going to support it? And so I don't know that we're going to answer it today, but I think it could be cool just to think about even just how do Aries and Scorpio work together. Now we know they're both intense, right? So, there's that similarity, but there's certainly a lot of differences between the two. And I feel like that the Chiron and Aries third house stuff that you do, because that North Node and Moon are in the 10th house, they directly impact what you have to give to society. So it's extra meaningful, like your personal empowerment, your personal willingness to be open-hearted or vulnerable about, you know, what scares you or about where you don't feel strong, right? I'm talking Aries words here, right? Because Chiron and Aries, typically, even if we feel like we're strong individuals, Chiron and Aries means somewhere in some way we feel like we have a weak spot, right? What you know, where is it or whatnot? But yeah, because there is a huge potential, and with Jupiter tied in there too, it's like if it was a big machine, you'd like tweak a couple little things and all of a sudden like it would be able to move on a whole new track and do a whole new thing, right? So how's that feel to me?
Yeah, definitely. And I often feel like I'm on the precipice of something or a big shift or change. Yeah. Or yeah. So, but I might even get I love getting my tarot out, and like you said, like even just the tarot card for Scorpio and Aries, and just like putting them together and feeling like it helps me in my body, feeling the archetypes and how they fit together.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I'm already thinking about that. So if Scorpio's the death card,
Yeah.
and if Aries is the Lord or the Emperor, when do you stand strong and hold a strong force, and when do you let things die and transform? That's a big part of it already, right? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's been a big thing my whole life, of the like that cyclical nature of life. Like when is it time to surrender, and you know, and come back, and when is it time to keep standing and holding, and
Right on. I love that. I do the same thing as you, so I really appreciate you bringing it. You speak my language when you do that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eve. It's been great
Thank you
having
so
you
much.
here.
Great. So good. Thanks, Tara. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Cheryl, are you ready? Cheryl.
I am ready.
There you are.
I am ready.
Hey,
Hello.
what I didn't mention for Eve, and Cheryl, it's true for you too. Both of you guys had Chiron in the house of your Pluto polarity point.
Huh?
So it's just something we're thinking about, right? That literally, like, you know, the soul's intention to move into that polarity point, and then Chiron's there too. So like it's like the emphasized signature of healing where that soul's journey goes. I didn't mention it, but I say it now. Eve had the same because she had Pluto in the 9th house and Chiron in the 3rd. So, but for you, and you can help me if I miss something here, let's just give a little shout out for people of where your little people are placed. So Pluto in Virgo in the 4th house, conjunct Uranus, conjunct Mars. It's a party down there. And I see that. And you can tell us what kind of party in a little bit. So and then South Node in Scorpio, conjunct Mercury and Neptune in the 5th house. And Cancer rising, and Ceres is in the 12th house, but right on the ascendant. So just noting that out. And Sun is in Sagittarius, conjunct Venus in the 6th house. And Chiron, 21 degrees Pisces retrograde in the 10th house, conjunct Saturn. And did I say North Node in Taurus in the 11th? If I didn't, North Node in Taurus in the 11th. And aspects that I see, Cheryl, you fill in the blanks if I didn't get some. Chiron conjunct Saturn, like I mentioned before, which is emphasized because that's in Pluto's polarity point house. And then Chiron trine the South Node, which is pretty cool because it's not just the South Node, it's South Node, Mercury, and Neptune. Chiron trine the Moon, and Chiron opposing that Pluto party, right? Pluto, Uranus, and Mars, which means, and then all these things. So you have a grand water trine. You have a grand water trine with Chiron up there with Saturn in Pisces, and the South Node, Mercury, Neptune in Scorpio, and the Moon in Cancer. So we'll talk about that in a few more minutes here. But my first, why don't you just even first tell us, I guess similar to Eve did, like what your relationship has been with Chiron, and if it's felt more like an ally, more like a challenge. You have a lot of trines going on, so I'm just curious to hear how that actually feels in you.
Well, I might need your help because like I said, I'm only so verbed in astrology at this point. but I can't help but think from everything that you've said and from what I've read, I'm a natural healer. I've been a naturopathic doctor for 27 years. And I'm thankful that I found it when I did, because I had a very difficult childhood where I felt very separate and alone. And, and a really neat thing, which I think is related to Chiron, is I've always felt that the more work, the more I can go into my hurt, the more I can help the people that I see.
Yeah. Yeah, because we can't meet anybody where we haven't been.
Yes. Yeah.
I believe it too. Yeah. 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 And I mean, I'm, by the way, you don't need to use astrology words. Don't ever worry about that. You can just tell us about your experience. If I feel the need to tell people, oh, she's talking about Pluto, I'll do that. But that Pluto conjunct, Pluto conjunct Uranus, conjunct Mars in the 4th house is a classic signature of trauma and drama around childhood, early experiences in childhood, with whatever we consider to be our parents, what we consider to be home. So, it's not, typically not easy energy to work with. And then a South Node in Scorpio, there's so think about this: Pluto in the 4th house, South Node in Scorpio. It's a lot of water, it's a lot of water. It's a lot of feeling. It's a lot of intense feeling. It's a lot of probably feeling that is hard to even feel manageable, right? Because with all that water energy, is very hard to explain. Like, water's not logical. Water just sort of as an element in us. Like it's not. And so anybody that has a South Node in Scorpio is going to have a North Node in Taurus, and North Node in Taurus is always about needing to find peace, right? It's always about needing to find peace, always about needing to find, and especially in the 11th house there, objectivity, being able to step back, being able to choose less, not having to, and honestly, being able to take care of yourself. That doesn't mean that we don't work to heal others. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean to let go of some of the old patterns of feeling, emotionally responsible for people, which can really happen and here with this energy. Are you aware right now? So transiting Neptune is retrograde right now, 19 degrees Pisces, which means it's on your Chiron right now. So yeah, okay. And that's true, Monica. When we get to you in just a minute, it's on yours too, right? Let me see. Both of you have got Neptune, transiting Neptune on your Chirons. So Neptune is an archetype, one of absolutely a number of things. It is a healing archetype. It's also, for me, whenever Neptune touches something, it's ready to open a new level of consciousness for us. Gotcha. So we really like literally being ready to understand something in a new way, which changes everything. Sometimes I call it leveling up, because I feel like after it happens, and so this being on your Chiron, even your relationship with what it means to have wounding, or what it means to work with medicine, or what any of these things could be right now shifting. It could be entirely shifting.
I totally know what you're saying. Well, it's been since I've been in practice for 27 years. Homeopathy has always been part of what I've used. But in the last year, I've just jumped into it in a depth that I never have. And I really get the archetypes. Like, I'm having these enormous aha moments. Yeah. And at the same time, I've been diving into astrology because I've always been dancing around it and interested in it. But I'm just starting to see it, and I'm not there, but I'm starting to see how the archetypes of homeopathy and astrology are interwoven.
Yeah. So yeah, and just so you guys know, Neptune takes so long to move. I always forget exactly what 165 years, I think it is, to go around the zodiac. So it doesn't even get around our whole birth chart. Like, this is the only time this trend is going to happen in your life. And it's not even it's less than a once in a lifetime thing. Like, I mean, like the doors of perception are literally open for healing. And so to me, it's such an exciting time. And because you got Chiron conjunct Saturn, you can work with it in tangible ways. And homeopathy, what a beautiful way. Like, you're literally taking information you're receiving from other, by the way, Neptune also opens up very much opens up psychic pathways. So, and for people that's different. It could be that my crystals on my desk start talking to me in new ways. Could be just that I get a feeling, but it opens up opens up sensitivities. Now, for some people, just so we be clear, some people just, go down the path of addiction when Neptune touches, because too much feeling opens up and it's just overwhelming. Neptune, everything has a shadow and a light side. And Neptune can literally make us feel confused. When Neptune comes, we actually can't exactly know what's happening, because until we reach a new level of consciousness, we really aren't even ready to appreciate what's happening. So there's a part of Neptune is being willing to be in the fog a little bit, and to let the information come as it comes in, and then figure it out later. So I just say, like, Neptune energy, for some people, Neptune on your Chiron, I feel like ultimately Neptune also washes away. So, like, if you've been doing healing in the past, Neptune, like the ocean, washes away, which is a beautiful thing. But it also can reveal where we've had false illusions, and that can be super painful. So sometimes, like, for the first time ever, people will recognize, for example, when Neptune is on their Chiron, they never realize the depth of a certain wound, or they never, realized a certain piece. Like, it opens them up to seeing it in a new way. I'm just offering that Neptune can manifest in different ways for people. Yeah.
No, I really appreciate that you bring this up, because at least it's been about the last 3 or 4 months, I think. Where we live, we're very rural, and we have 67 acres of woods.
Oh.
So I've been going for walks a lot more and getting my hands in the soil. And I really feel like I feel like I've kind of come into myself. Like, I'm very willing to go wherever it is that I need to go to heal and be the best version of me that I can be in this lifetime, for me and for everyone around me. And it's been really good.
Yeah. The beautiful,
I just
Neptune, to me, it's that it is the archetype of, like, ultimate oneness and connection, right? Like, when Neptune comes, like, everything just seems, in its positive way, we can see how everything's interconnected, and then that can then change how we do all things within it. You know what I love, Cheryl, that yours and Eve, both of you, your examples were all about how the medicine has been, like, ignited, because so many times we talk about Chiron, and there's tough stuff to work with Chiron, but I'm really appreciating today the beautiful examples of the medicine, because I feel like that's ultimately, like I was saying earlier on, when we use words like wounded or broken or separate, but I don't know, like, everything you're saying, this transit right now, and how you work with your chart, not that you haven't worked with your woundedness, but your overriding theme here is all your medicine. It's beautiful. And that trine, by the way, it's interesting with the grand water trine you have going on with Chiron. I was making a note that, like, with grand water trines, oftentimes there's, like, a need to seek emotional sanctuary. And that's really common with, for example, with, like, where your Pluto, Uranus, Mars placement is, which is, like, a lot of trauma in that emotional area, right? So part of this is your way of creating this space. The trines are always tricky, because trines, they can be super positive, or they can create dependencies and make us be lazy. So, everybody has different ways that they work with them. In particular, like the water trine, some of its real positive things are just this huge capacity for empathy. you know,
Mhm.
and to like psychically intuitively tune in to what people need, which I feel like you're literally doing with the plants, with the homeopathy right now, and how you're going to work with them. With, like, it's not just like you're working with little bottles of homeopathic pills, like you're literally tuning into like the you know, the spirit of the plant or whatever the substance is that's being, you know, being made into that. But that trine,
Yep.
you know, it can be overly protective sometimes, and it can be overly dependent sometimes. So those are just some of the things in general. I'm not saying this is you. I'm just saying when we're working with grand water trines, sometimes that
Mhm.
people have those issues around them.
Oh, I
They
definitely,
yeah.
yeah, I did. I
Oh,
did. That, I think, oh yeah. That was a good, that was a good part of my work. Yeah,
huh.
being in, my mom is not a very mentally well person. And unfortunately, my first major relationship when I left my family of origin, I figured out, well, after I was out of the relationship, he basically was my mom, another emotionally
Yeah.
volatile person, because I was trying to work through it, right?
Yeah.
And no, I was dependent to the point that I was enmeshed with this person that I totally forgot, who am I?
Yeah.
You know, I lost everything about who am I. When we stopped being together, I didn't know, what food do I like? What do I do if I'm not working? I had lost it. So there was major dependence, and for a really good part of my life, a major dependence on whoever was close to me, basically to help me feel stable and
Yeah.
safe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Really big, but no, it, because I think, I've, with the reading that I've done, I went through my Chiron return, right, around 50, 51, and that really kicked my ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was bad enough going through that, but then I was right in the middle of menopause too.
Oh, it's terrible. It's timed right. Feels like it's timed right at the like ultimate like.
Really bad timing. But I'm so obstinate and pig-headed. It had to get that bad to like wake me up and make me drop a whole bunch of things that really didn't serve me or anyone around me.
Yeah.
So it was yay, you know, it had to get that bad. No, with what you're describing, with what's going on in Neptune right now, it's lovely.
Yeah.
It's, and I wanted to mention, it's so neat that when you were talking about the water trine, because I was speaking with my husband earlier today, that it's, when I'm in with my patients, it's, it almost feels like a bit beyond empathy. I almost become them. Like I can wear what they're going through, and there's such intuition in it for me that I can really figure out, you know, and it, I've been reading so much on homeopathy for so long, it's almost like I don't even, it's not a mental process any longer. It's it's really coming down to intuition, and the things that I'm seeing are just incredible.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, that's a really beautiful description of how you don't, I mean, this whole idea of like the grand water trine sanctuary, like you can bring that to your patients too. Yeah. And I mean, I think, you know, the with that, with Pisces too, like when you were talking before about or early on, that's looking to anybody, like anyone to sort of like be dependent on people or to need things from people or to help people help you feel okay. Chiron and Pisces, you know, that core wound in part is kind of believing that there's not something greater than us that takes care of us sometimes. Like Chiron and Pisces can feel like it's just hopeless, right? You know, the universe does not have my back, or like, or there's not like a, and so, you know, when that's the case, we all have different ways going about trying to sort of self-soothe or to get what we need. But that grand water trine has always been about emotional self-sufficiency. And most of us,
Yeah.
and I'm speaking from, I have got like a stellium and Cancer in the fourth house. I'm speak from experience here too. Those of us who need to learn emotional self-sufficiency, it comes through some tough times because we have to fully hit whatever bottom we need to hit to know what we need to do. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Chiron and Pisces, when you were just describing, like, not even just going beyond the empathy with your patients, I was just thinking about how with Chiron and Pisces, with Pisces, there is no separation. So, you know what, I mean, we are all one. So if you can hold that space, it's the truth anyway, right? This is that is, you saw how I talked about earlier on about how Chiron being the archetype of separation and about connection and union. This is a perfect example of you're literally embodying that with them, right? Yeah. And that kind of compassion and that kind of, and being with people in that way, I don't even know if we have words to describe what that is. But it's like when you're working with homeopathy, it's not like you're working with a separate thing. It's you. That's why it feels that way, right? It's like the musician who becomes the music. It's the artist who becomes the art. There becomes no object anymore. It just is. But
Yes.
but to do that in the healing the way you're doing it, like, your patients are lucky. Yeah. They're
Thank you.
right. It's a blessing. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share before we move on to Monica? Did I leave something out that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think the only thing I wanted to mention, because you, with what you were just talking about, when the Chiron, I think the big thing of the Chiron return that was very interesting to go through was, at that point, my husband and I had an 11-unit apartment building that we were renovating ourselves and looking after. I had my full practice. We had an organic spa that was part of our house, and we had 12 employees that I was managing. And it just got really big, really fast, and it was overwhelming. And what the big thing for me, for my husband and I, about my going through the Chiron return, was it reminded me of, like, we were so busy and I was so in my head, which is really not the place where I want to be all the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So all of those things started to vibrate and fail during the Chiron return. And then I realized I don't want to push like this anymore. This stuff doesn't matter to me anymore. And that's when I started to get into homeopathy more. And that's when I started to look at astrology more and remember there's a lot more to life. We're not all separate. And all of those, it all came back. It's like I forgot. So the Chiron return was so amazing in that way.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the things that I forgot were so important.
Yeah. And you have such a natural flow. Like with Chiron, to me, conjunct Saturn and trine Moon, those are both like body planets to me. It's like literally like the Chiron bridge between body and spirit, like that's that's a natural marriage for you. Yeah, it's like that. I feel like even just like the more you do it, the more it'll be even. I put a note here with your Chiron conjunct Saturn. It was interesting. I felt like there's a part of this that's like having strength and limits and maturity in a world with pain and suffering, I wrote down. And I put this also there for you, Cheryl, because you have Ceres on your ascendant. So grief and feeling pain is a big part of your medicine. It's nothing wrong, you know what I mean? Like it's actually, it is an inroad.
Yep.
But to have healthy limits is important around that. But it's interesting, like almost like Saturn is a master, right? And Chiron and Pisces could be a healer, healing people's suffering. But it could be like a master of suffering, but in a positive way. Like in a way you can hold space for it, and like it like transforms into healing. It's super cool. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I think, like you were saying earlier, I think a good part is I'm just very comfortable with sitting with people saying nothing when they're in the room with me and they're going through the process.
Yeah.
I'll just sit there. I'll touch their hand if they need it. Otherwise, I'm very comfortable, and I know it's very important for them to feel.
Yeah. And Pisces as an archetype is about acceptance, right? Meaning that there is no problem. So when you offer that to your patients, you are conveying the message, emanating the message that it's okay, right? And that doesn't mean that there's not going to be things you're going to offer to support them. That there's a difference between here are some things we can do to support you versus we need to fix you.
Yeah.
It's huge, huge. Like so meeting people in that place in their soul where it's like that gift of letting them know that no matter what space they're in, like it's okay. And we don't even need to, just no problem. I can meet you here, no problem. It's huge. Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking. And by the way, I didn't have any, you were very clear communicating. Just so you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Monica, I'm sorry. Thank you for being very patient.
Hi.
Hi. So let's do the same thing and let people know what your basic chart signature is. We have Pluto in the 9th house in Virgo, conjunct Uranus, which is just
on the 8th.
It's in the 9th in Porphyry.
Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you been using Placidus maybe?
No, Porphyry. Let's see if you got everything right.
Well, Linda, if you're there and you can hear me, can you join us for a second? Linda?
Yes, I heard. What's
oh,
that?
Good.
I'm sorry. That's the 8th. I'm sorry. It's like, I know it's in the 8th house.
What?
My Pluto. I'm like an 8th.
Well, that is the
house.
8th, right there. That is the
No,
That's the 8th.
it's in the 9th house in this chart, right? Oh, no, I'm so sorry. It's in the 8th. Jeez, Monica, I'm so sorry.
I know my chart like by heart, so.
I really believe you. Okay, my brain, I don't know what to tell you, but I am with you now. Yes, Pluto is in the 8th house in Virgo, and it's conjunct Uranus that has just crossed the cusp into the 7th house. So they're together, but they're splitting the 7th and the 8th houses together. And the South Node is in Capricorn, and that is in the 11th house. And the South Node is conjunct Ceres, so another Ceres signature to look at after Cheryl's as well. And the North Node in Cancer in the 5th house. And the Sun is conjunct Jupiter and Mercury. Mercury's retrograde, and all of those are in Taurus in the 3rd house. Chiron is in Pisces in the 2nd house. And again, this Chiron is 17 degrees Pisces, so transiting Neptune is touching on it too, just like we talked about with Cheryl. And Aquarius rising, and Saturn is in the 1st house. For the main aspects that I have noted down here, that Chiron is opposing that Pluto-Uranus conjunction, and Chiron is square Venus, and Venus in Gemini, which is in the 5th house. And Chiron is trine Neptune conjunct the moon that are up on the midheaven in Scorpio. Monica, is there anything I missed as far as main aspects that you're aware of?
No.
Okay, cool.
That was me.
Now, no, it's totally me. Of all the things that an evolutionary astrologer should get right, it's Pluto in the right house. But I'm telling you, sometimes, these days I look at things and don't always get them right. But that was just a temporary thing. I'm totally with it, just so you know. So I want to, let's just start like we did with both Eve and Cheryl before I even say anything, for you just letting us know sort of what your relationship has been with Chiron. So before I even stick anything into it, so you can kind of tell us how that's felt, and in particular, like has it felt like an ally or more like a challenge? Maybe has that changed over time? Just give us a feel.
I had no idea. Yeah, I had no idea the power of it until I fell completely around my return in a big trap of pain. I've never been a person that deals with pain on a day-to-day. I tend to I do a very Piscean thing. I completely neglect it or do not look at it. I just go the other way. So I think, I want to say one word about the whole thing with Chiron for me is to understand my sense of value. I really learned to know what is it that I need, because for years and I don't know, decades, I was always merging, especially in my intimate relationships, and I was just like becoming this one person with the other and not really taking care of my needs and becoming like the biggest supporter of the other. And like, you can do this, just seeing all this value on other people. I'm like the best, and I still do that right now. I practice astrology and I'm an artist, and with my fellow artists or whoever, I can see where the value is, and there's not a single moment where I don't tell people how, like, I can see what they're good at, and I'm very supportive. That's my takeaway. That's how I heal. But it took so much of me. I don't really talk about how bad I was too openly, but there was a moment that I didn't want to live anymore when the Chiron return was, because it was too much pain. It was so painful because I just did not feel that nobody could understand what I was feeling. I could feel the pain of the world, but mostly mine, because I was transparent and invisible. I had completely given myself to the other. And I actually, every single relationship that I've been, I usually cut like this. I left my husband of 20 years from Friday to Saturday. Made a decision, go like that. And then I just go like in panic mode. So, and it was a trip. It was Chiron return. It was a big trip. I would want to say not the word save me, but astrology sort of gave me a purpose more than save me, because I don't use saving anymore. That's a very low vibration of Pisces. I don't save people. I'm not going to save anybody. I don't save myself. I just become accountable, and I give myself the value that I need at the given moment.
Yeah. As you were saying that, Monica, and thank you for sharing about the Chiron return. And in particular, we talked about a little bit about this, I think, with Cheryl, but Chiron and Pisces in particular, Pisces is there's so much feeling, and there can be so much sensitivity, and there can be so much pain in there, that there can be a literal feeling of hopelessness, right? That there is no meaning, no hopelessness. Why, it's totally hopeless. But there's this interesting thing with hope. I was in a workshop last weekend, and the facilitator was talking about the power of hopelessness, not in a negative way, but in the sense that when we have hope for something, we're waiting for something to change. And that it's so empowering to instead of having hope, to just be to be able to be okay, fully present right now. And when you were talking, that's it made me think of that. And that to me is very much as a healthy way of Pisces. Instead of, Pisces we link with hope. And I don't mean to say this is a bad thing, but I feel like true Pisces is that everything is okay as it is right now. There is no need to have hope because there is no problem. And just like you were saying,
surrender. You surrender to the moment and you accept the moment as it is. Because if you cannot fix it, the Virgo side, then you just go along with it.
Yeah.
And you move away. One other thing that I have really, really worked very, very thoroughly right now, it's about all the things that I used to neglect. Many. And, I was never an addict, thank God. I could have been with a chart, like clearly alcoholic or drug addict.
For sure. Yeah.
Or like shopping. I had my bits and pieces of not seeing reality for what it was. So I would go like this, neglect, and I will paint the most beautiful landscape of things that I don't want to deal with, completely different. But now, and I've been applying this so much during the pandemic, it is like, as soon as I feel that there's neglect, I'm not taking care of me, I go in front and I said, what is it? And I do it. And it's like, wow, this is so great. So I incorporated, and this is a very, very Chiron thing that I did. I started going back to all the Monicas that I had left behind. I abandoned. So I took pictures I found all the pictures when I'm 4, when I'm 7, when I'm 9, when blah, 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 you know, and I live right now with 17 of them. Every morning when I do meditation, we do a circle, all of us, and we pray, we meditate, we talk about what we want. And I integrated every single part of Monica that needs to be taken care of herself. So, and when I see that I'm attracted to you as a person, and I feel like the need that I want to save you because it's immediate, it's there. I cannot get away with it. One of the Monicas comes and goes like, just ask her if she's okay, but that's it, we gotta go. So I'm always giving that space right now for me, and I'm no longer feeling guilty that I'm taking care of myself, because when I grew up, that died, mom said to me, take care of your siblings. I had a sense of guilt carrying all the time. I'm no longer guilty about nothing. I am accountable, which is very different. So it's been a long journey. It's been more than 5 years since my return, but I can say right now that I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life.
How, like in the art that you create, because clearly that Neptune moon trine Chiron, that's a huge artist signature, right? I mean, like it could be all kinds of art, but could you share with us a little bit about how that actually comes out when you're creating things? Like I don't know.
Wow, I'm psychic. I'm like, so here's where I am every time that I create. I'm in the quantum field. I'm not here. I just open. I'm open and I allow everything to go through me. And then because if you see every single, like my Neptune is with Saturn all the time. Neptune in the 10th, you know, Capricorn is really my 12th, and Pisces is on, Saturn is on Pisces. So has taken me a while to figure it out which side of the whole thing. So I have a magic wand and I can materialize anything that I create. So it took me a while to figure it out that I could do that with my life, because I can do it naturally with my work. So I listen a lot to I do a lot of public art commissions. I do huge pieces that are stay forever everywhere. And people give me a lot of money to do that. They give me all the trust. And I just listen to them. I listen to what they need. I listen to the people. I listen to the space. And then I just go in and I channel. And then I put it out. And then I detach and I disconnect and move to the next. It's a very like a magician kind of thing. But I also, one thing that it has been very important for me is not to categorize myself in anything. So when I started doing astrology, I realized that I could read charts, and it's been like I call that my social work. I do readings, and it's a one-to-one. It's so beautiful to be able to connect at that level with a human being, even if it's for 60 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever. So I still do that. I do my artwork. I teach. I do a lot of stuff. I'm the most like multifaceted person, and I'm so happy that I was able to integrate all that. So astrology has given me the most freedom, and it was through really understanding that I needed to take care of me first.
Yeah. And that North Node in Cancer, I mean, you articulated that really well of the importance of that. It's interesting too, when you think about, like, I also like with the South Node in Capricorn conjunct Ceres, like there's a lot of, it's not just like old responsibilities to take care, because Capricorn always has these like tied in things of like, it's my responsibility to make sure everybody's okay or everything's okay. But when you add Ceres in there, then there's like this deep grief around it, right? Really deep grief. And so it's not easy sometimes to move from that to taking it serious that you need to take care of yourself. Like sometimes a lot of people might experience this as like even selfishness on their part, because you brought up that saving word, which is a big Neptune and Pisces word, right? And just and this is the thing I always like to bring up too, is that just the idea that we think we can save someone, you know, there is a level of self-importance that we give to ourselves that is not real, you know? And so anytime that we're working, especially, my goodness, with Neptune conjunct moon, you know, I mean, that's like, you're literally like tapped into like other frequencies and other dimensions all the time. But it's not always easy. And I'm using the word real really loosely here because I have my own relationship with reality, but it's not always easy to figure out what is real, or what you should be making real right now.
Yeah.
You know, so that even the whole idea that there was someone who needed to be saved, for example, I think I love the way that you have like brought all those pieces of yourself together, because it makes me think, you know, how much I like doing planets first. For me, that's just a version of doing that too. You know, I have Mars Terra and I have Neptune Terra and I have Saturn Terra, you know, and they all like, sometimes one of them starts screaming and I have to like figure out what the, you know, what the deal is. And you're doing that naturally, like.
The way I did it with my art was really interesting because I had left my husband, and then I fell for like a situation that was completely like super chaotic, but it was too late when I realized that I was in this relationship that I shouldn't be. But that was like, okay, let's go all the way, right? And so at one point I started having these dreams because I have very clear images that come to me, and it was like, your next work is going to be with glass. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'll buy glass, but it has nothing to do with what I do. Okay, so then I got invited to do a subway station in New York with the mosaic. And I go to Germany to make the mosaic, and then I cut myself. I didn't do it, but I was like playing with it while I was talking to the artisans. And then all of a sudden I bleed, and I go, oh, and people say, be careful, that's glass. And I was like, wow, this is glass? This is the work I'm going to do. This is the one I was thinking. So the interesting thing is that I took all the images and stuff that I've done before, and I tossed it up, like almost like up in the air. And then when they fell, this beautiful mosaic full of color came out. And when you see this, I see myself like I came out. I was like, this is me. I will never stop not being myself. So it was, I healed through my work. I healed through the pain. I healed through giving. I still, you know, I keep on studying all the archetypes and all that, because I think in the language, as you said at the very beginning, you know, there's this frequency there that really allow us to connect to who we are, only that we're using the language to express. But we all have that. Yeah. It's all inherent in ourselves, in every single cell. So I'm very, very happy. And I recently moved to Miami Beach because in a dream, new moon in Cancer on my node. I had a dream that said, you got to get out of New York after 26 years. You got to move to Miami Beach, and you have 3 weeks to do that. And then I moved in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So I am just always listening to,
you're just following it for sure. Well, I'm sure Linda probably is ready for us to wrap up. I have one more question for you, and it's about your Chiron square Venus. And I know you talked about this a little bit earlier about, you know, your relationships. And I just want to mention, with your Chiron in the second house, oftentimes, at least initially, Chiron in the second house, the wound can be triggered when we have to try to be self-sufficient, or when we have to stop relying on someone else, when we have to like really do it for ourselves. And then when we add that to square Venus, there can really be a need to heal relationships at a deep level. What's interesting though is that your Venus is in the fifth house. So the fifth house can be romantic relationships, but also your relationship with art. And I feel like I'm wondering if you have anything you might share with us about that. I know that you're kind of in your flow now, but I'm wondering if you could share anything about how it might have felt working with that challenge.
Well, I had a lot of, and I have to be honest, like I was very like, why am I the last one? Can't they see that I'm like, you know, that's that. It's like, people are not taking care of my important, I mean, I have to make fun of myself, because that's what I was feeling. I was like, you know, like that. And that's the impatience that I have when I don't think that people are really not giving me the attention that I want. I started understanding that I can only validate myself. It's about me. It's not about you telling me that you like this or you like that. It's about me really looking inside. And I want to add something else to the Chiron in the second. Very difficult for me to take care of myself physically. Food. I could go, like, if I had nobody for a long time. And it takes a long time because I tend to abandon myself very, very easily. So I have to do like a very big schedule and be like, that's why I brought the little girls. It's like, little Monica, we got to brush our teeth. Really? Now? Let's do it now. Hey, other Monica, let's go and have breakfast. And so I have these people all because I did not have that when I was growing up. I was very neglected because my mom was taking care of a lot of stuff. And I was the older one. So even like she would look at my nails and she says, why are you so abandoned? This is the funny thing. My mom is asking me, why am I so abandoned? And I'm like, what do you mean? And because I used to go and play out in the playground, so my nails were always like dirty. Why, look at you, you're so abandoned. And I was like, oh, I don't know if that's abandoned, but they're black. That's all. I don't know. She used to use these words. And, you know, my mom also has a Neptune moon conjunct. Another story. So it's interesting because that word abandonment. And one last thing I want to say is like in my relationships, intimate relationships, I always fell in love with the people who adored me. So I was not in love. I was in love with the devotion. Or I fell in love or I fell for the people I wanted to save. So this is the first time in my life that I am with nobody because I basically wanted to give myself time to know who I am. And now I know who I am and I am so fantastic.
And I just got to give a shout. This is like Saturn in the first house, Chiron in the second house. Ownership for self, take care of myself. I'm the author of myself. I define myself. I do it for myself. And everything you just described is an inside out job, meaning once you've done that, look at what's all the flow. And that speaks to the Chiron trine, Neptune moon on the midheaven. Then the external flow, you know, it's unstoppable. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
And the magic one there with the resources, it's inside.
Yeah.
No fear about having or not having, it's there, but just get into the flow. No fear. Just get into the flow. So that's all.
No, I think, yeah, thank you. I hear what I heard. That's your faith. That's, yeah, it's great. Thank you, Monica, for sharing so many and apologize for like my little Pluto screw up at the beginning.
No. That was me being Virgo. It's like, no, I know it.
Well, believe it or not, I have Pluto in the 6th house, so I'm not very easy on myself when I make mistakes. So when I do, just like when you were saying, have to laugh at yourself, it's actually a good moment. It's a good learning moment of, yep, you know what? Sometimes I do, and it's all fine.
It's
so
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Linda. Thank you, Sarah. Enjoy the weekend. Ciao, ciao.
You too.
So Tara, we do have 2 questions for you with chart.
Yeah. Oh, with the chart.
Are you exhausted or are you okay?
No, I'm okay. Hold on. Let me just get back to which chart?
Not these charts, another chart.
So I can stop the share.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll share my screen.
Go. Thank you. No, I hope that you're not exhausted. I know I like to run you on when it's the weekend.
No, I'm absolutely fine. And Carolyn. Okay.
Carolyn, are you there?
Yes, she's here. This is her question, but she is here.
Okay. Hi. Do you want me to read it out loud so everyone can hear it?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Carolyn's question is, I have been a wreck for a bit, crying at the drop of a hat. I wondered if I could ask a question about transiting Chiron being opposite my natal sun. FYI, I am well supported and talk to my psychiatrist at least every 2 weeks. Absolutely, you could ask her. Yeah, please.
The last week and a half, 2 weeks, I've been dropping into just a darkness that I've known, but also panicking. And it's coming from a place where I felt I was making breakthroughs and, just that. And then all of us, over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, it's been so dark, bordering on panic attacks.
Carolyn, I know very little. I mean, I just know what you told me, but I'm wondering, you mentioned something about how it was an area you thought you were making progress in. And I know that sometimes when we get really close to a breakthrough, there's a part of our ego self that really makes a last fight to dig in and not make that leap. so it is, you've been talking to psychiatrists, you may be very aware of this, but if you haven't, I just offer this, that sometimes things feel to get extra worse right before they change, because there is that part of us that digs in those heels and says, you know, and I don't know a way around that. It's just a through, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. It helps that you reaffirm that. I was thinking that. I've spoken to my shrink about it, and I was saying, you know, 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and he said no. 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
I agree with him. Yes.
And it's and I'm keeping going, but it's just I was just wondering about the transiting Chiron opposite.
Yeah, it's pretty much exact right now, because Chiron is 7 degrees Aries, and you know, Chiron as an archetype, it invites us to open up to our sense of vulnerability or our sense of fear or our sense of, right? So, and Chiron in Aries in particular, like for all of us right now, is, so Aries is attached with adrenaline. I'm just offering this to you as well, right? Chiron and Aries already is an archetype of getting us to feel fear, and to feel uncertainty about who we are and where we're going, which, as I mean, think about just our world and at least in the United States, for example, like that's real stuff happening. That's legitimately reflecting this here. But when you have all that collective energy that you're already a part of, opposing your sun in Libra, a sun in Libra likes harmony, likes to feel that things are okay. So I think part of it, you're reacting to that awareness that everything isn't right now as harmonious as you would like it to be. I think that's very natural to have that feeling with that transit, right? I mean, to me, that is that.
Yeah.
And you have in your natal chart, you have Sun conjunct Neptune, which doesn't want to feel pain. Neptune doesn't want to hurt. It doesn't want to, I mean, there's a certain part that doesn't want to face things even sometimes. Chiron and Aries is like, I mean, it's the invitation to face ourselves, you know, confront where we're afraid. And it's not about, like, you know, I know people talk oftentimes about like getting rid of the fear. To me, that's not my thing at all. It's like, okay, I am afraid, but I can be more okay staying in my fear. I can still have my appointment with my psychiatrist. I can still do my astrology work. I can still get up and make my dinner, and I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, for that Libra, and you have Pluto in the 4th house too. So like feelings and emotions are already an intense type of thing for you. You have Chiron in Scorpio. So, you know, that's deep wounding around deep emotional, you know, betrayals and issues in the 7th house around, you know, and this can be around relationships too. So, you know, I don't know enough personally about you to, you know, to give a bunch of more exact things, but the fact that you're feeling anxious, to me, that's okay. So what's underneath that? Do you know, like what's underneath that level, the thing that's making you feel, you know, uncertain, anxious, that's got you stirred up, that makes you feel like you're going backwards where you were going forward. If you can stay with that a little longer, what I mean by that is we're all really fast when it comes to emotions to leave, for even joy, right? Like, no matter what it is, the minute I start to feel something, you know, it's like, and we're masters of like using everything in our lives, from chemicals to coffee to chocolate to like distractions to whatever, to like, I don't want to feel angry, so I'm going to do this, right? Or I don't want to feel sad, I'm going to do this. I'm saying there might be some good medicine in here for you, if it's safe for you, and you only know this about you, if it's safe for you to stay a little bit more right where you are, and to not make it a problem, to sit with it and feel what's in there for you to get from it. Because I think you're back to what I said in the beginning. I think this is just a part of you that is trying to like hold back your own evolution. And scary, of course it's scary. It's scary to the part of you that really, I mean, that like the ego, for example, it has every reason to be scared. It is going to be left behind when you make that shift. or give up that habit or give up that whatever thing, that whatever that old security blanket was that we had. And so the body, even when like the body is the last also to lead to like release things. So like Carolyn, when like, even if like just say that you've been through kind of the stages of moving through something, there's can be residual in your body too. Just because you feel something in your body doesn't have to be a problem either. Sometimes it just energetically needs to work itself out.
I'm doing a lot of adapted yoga. I have an amazing teacher who has, I couldn't lift my arm up for about 4 years, and I can. And I'm painting and I'm drawing and, you know, I'm taking classes. So I seem to be, I'm quite miserable, but I keep on keeping on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to go to painting class. I just go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, whatever. I don't want to sit with my feelings. I just do it.
Mm-hmm. Have you gotten to the place yet where you can really appreciate your, I want to feel miserable?
No. No,
Trust me, but when you get there, whole world will change.
I'm still on my,
I get it.
Still on beam me up, Scotty. I don't want to.
I hear you, but I'm saying at some point, maybe there will be room for you actually to be like, wow, I have been creating misery because for whatever reason, you know, there's a part of you that there's a safety in that, right? That miserable. All I'm saying is that, and I'm not, and you know, we all have our shtick. I do too, right? We all have it. And I don't know whether I'll ever get past the ones that I have, but I know that the things that I have had been able to start to have a real relationship with, like with my being miserable and how I want to be miserable, if I could have a real relationship with that and actually start to be like, yeah, you know what? I just want to be miserable today. I'm going to go to painting class even I don't want to go, right? That is a game changer. If and when we get there.
I'm kind of there. I'm not, oh good, I'm miserable. I'm going
to,
but it's like, it's just, I've always had areas of my life where I've felt the fear and done it anyway. Mm-hmm. Whether it's driving to get on my horse, who might be kind of fresh and bucking.
Yeah.
I could, you know, like I walk myself up there. I go in or I used to, in increments. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing. And I do have this, I'm smiling because my psychiatrist, Eric, looks like he's about 12 years old. He's just the best listener and the best. He's perfect. He's perfect for me. He graduated 3 months before I started working with him, and he's, you know, serendipity.
Yeah. Well, Carolyn, how about this? Try this one on for size. How about, I love being miserable so I can keep having therapy with the therapist that I love, right? There's a million directions you could go with this, you know, like, and I can see by the look on your face, like there's some, you know, there's some juicy stuff in there.
Yeah, he's going on sabbatical in December, but he said he's not abandoning me.
Good.
Which we'll still be in touch, which, you know, like I'm going, oh, thank God. And then I'm going, oh no, he needs to take care of himself, poor baby.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, you know, I don't know if this is what you wanted from me, but this is the kind of conversation I feel like that we don't need to, like, it's not a problem, right? Let's just see how more we can just be with it. And it sounds to me like you're doing that.
This is exactly, thank you, Tara. I wasn't going to ask. I was just, you know, and then I thought, no, Tara says good stuff.
The thing is, what you're describing, I try to do for myself, right? Okay. I try to sit with my own stuff, even if it's like 1 minute longer than I did yesterday, right? You know, 10 seconds counts. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Carolyn.
Very much.
And just, just one more.
Okay.
I'll just grab it. Just one sec.
Thank you. I feel like, Linda, we should have known with the sun opposing Chiron that we would have had a longer meeting today, right? So,
Fantastic. Yeah, let's just go with it. It's great. Sorry, this one is very long, and
whoa.
I condensed it down as much as I could. But any words of advice would be great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read it out loud just because if people are maybe listening. The question is, many are projecting abusive stuff towards me. How can I rightly address the verbal abuse specifically through my empathetic energies? And this is Damon. There's Chiron in Aries in the 4th house. Chiron is opposing Uranus, which is conjunct Jupiter and conjunct the South Node. Mars in the 12th in Sagittarius trining Chiron. And Chiron is square Neptune. Neptune in Scorpio in the 12th. Wait a minute. How can that be? That can't be. Chiron square Neptune, are we sure? Am I not seeing this right, Linda?
Is that a square or a trine? Sorry.
After my last Pluto debacle, I feel like I need to no, it says Chiron square Neptune, but it looks to me like Chiron is Neptune's up here, right? That's like Quincunx.
Chiron is trine Mars.
Yes, but the next bullet down says Chiron square Neptune.
And it should be what, a trine?
Looks like a quincunx to me.
Oh. Okay.
It's Scorpio to Aries.
All right. Do you want me to change it?
No, I'm just saying it out loud so that I'm just making sure that I didn't, do something crazy. Because I'm already off the rails today. So, okay. And then the rest of the question is, I need examples of healthy ways to address those practicing abusive behavior so as not to turn away from it. Some are convincing themselves I'm their abuser because I don't fall to their abuse. There's a turning around of roles to try to get away with abuse that I sense is an important lesson to learn. Okay. Damon, if you're there, it's going to be easier for me if you can talk a little bit about this.
No, he's not in the meeting.
He's not in the meeting. Okay. So, all right. Well, let's do our best. Linda, if you want to jump in here with me, I'm going to say I'm wide open to that because I haven't had time to look at this clearly. Let me first give a couple of thoughts before I even look at this chart about people projecting things. And this is not at all me saying that I'm not at all saying this isn't real or not happening. It is my personal belief that whatever we are experiencing external of ourselves, on some level, there's something about that inside ourselves internally that we are not either willing to deal with or to face. And so we create something outside. And the thing we create outside is often a version of that thing. Let's just take anger, for example. Let's just say that I'm not comfortable being angry. I haven't come to terms with my own anger. And so I create people around me to be angry. The versions that I create around me may be very distorted. And so and this does not just apply to this particular situation here, but I mean anything that's happening around us outside. And this does not mean that I'm excusing abusive behavior or any of that type of thing. I'm just saying that I'm an interior astrologer, and I always want to look at the inside. And so that would be the first advice I would say here, like what's going on with abuse for Damon, right? What are the stories about abuse that are going on inside of him? Because that type of conversation can help a lot to sort of get to what's going on underneath here. Chiron opposing Uranus, we talked about this some earlier today. That to me is at a deep need for deep systemic healing. But to me, that is not necessarily where this abusive thing is coming in. This Damon has Pluto conjunct the South Node. Pluto in the 9th house in Virgo conjunct South Node in Virgo in the 10th house. And we know in Jeffrey Wolf's Jeffrey Wolf Green's work with Pluto conjunct the South Node, that oftentimes there can be a lot of really intense past life karmic dynamics that haven't been fully dealt with. And it's very common for people with Pluto conjunct South Node to take a longer time in the current lifetime to sort of start moving through those things, meaning oftentimes it's not until after the second Saturn return that we start to be able to get clear and work through some more of that. I can't talk with Damon right now, so it's hard for me to know, you know, what state or where he's at, but I know Pluto conjunct South Node is intense. It's intense. And Virgo in general as an archetype can speak to lifetimes of feeling overpowered by other people or overpowering other people back and forth. But because it's Virgo, there can be a sense of feeling held down by others, forced to be a servant to others, subjugated by others. This energy can be here. And a Mars retrograde, which to me, more so than these Chiron aspects here, Mars retrograde is very much about needing to reclaim. I mean, there's a whole list of things with Mars. One, you know, reclaiming our own vitality, our own energy, our own desires, but it also is, in a certain level, reclaiming our right to be angry. And I'm not saying the right to be reactively angry and go punch people in the face, but I mean to like literally feel and reclaim our anger. And that Mars, that's retrograde, is on the ascendant. So, and this is a Sagittarius ascendant here. And so there is, in some respects here, I feel like a need to reclaim one's own fire. Some of that fiery energy. And so sometimes what we can do in our lives is we can create circumstances that sort of build up a similar kind of energy, but like I said, in a distorted way, around that. Linda, is there anything you would add? I mean, you've got equal insight here too.
Yes, you said it really well. I would just add, with that Mars trining Chiron, to really just be really honest about it and about the feelings, and to really feel them. Yes, I love what you said, Tara, about feeling like it's coming at him, you know, from out there, and it really does feel like that. And to some extent, sometimes we just have to take that. Sometimes, I don't know, am I saying the wrong thing?
No.
Just feeling like sometimes there's no choice because of this, the 12th house is very much a higher power. And but I think in time a lot of this will dissolve and change, because you are actually deconditioning and changing, and it's a crisis in your consciousness actually. And so yeah, be really honest about it and really feel those feelings and allow yourself to feel them.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, this is the thing with Chiron in Aries, with Mars retrograde, those energies, and especially with, you know, Mars being trine that Chiron, I totally agree, Linda. There's to the extent that you Mars retrograde repress, not just your own anger, but it's Sagittarius, your own volatility even, right? To the extent that you repress things within yourself, you force yourself to create outside versions of yourself. And so the more that you can be honest, which is a perfect word, Linda, the more you can be honest with what's going on inside of you, the less you have to create it outside. I just, you know, with some of these signatures, and there's just not a way around that, right? It just, we're going to do it one way or another. You know, if I'm having a, I don't know, and I've had many moments in my life where I've had issues where I have, you know, felt different things like this or whatnot. And again, it doesn't mean that that wasn't actually happening outside, but I try to remind myself that that's happening to me. I'm seeing it that way, and it's happening to me that way for a reason. And that comes from within me. Chiron in Aries in the 4th house, you know, if we think about the wound being triggered by the house that Chiron's in, the 4th house can very much be when there's a feeling, when emotions are upset. So just not feeling emotionally secure, which is exactly what happens when somebody is abusive towards us. So if you want to think of it this way, what's happening is actually a really good classroom for you to really step into that Chiron and Aries medicine, which just takes courage. I mean, not just courage, but a big part of it is it takes courage. It takes courage to stick in there when things are unsettling, and to learn to stand up for yourself when you need to, and to learn when not to fight when you don't need to. I just wonder, we don't have examples of exactly what's happening here. But there's also, my eyes just kind of wandering around the chart to see if there's anything else really useful here.
Can I just say?
Yeah, well, just going to say Mars conjunct Neptune, one thing to be aware of too is that's another signature for avoiding anger and avoiding any intense emotions, right? Not just anger, but even like rage, right? So I think that part of this is, again, it's not easy stuff. And we in our society, like most of us weren't raised that's one of the hardest things I think to confront, because we don't have really good models for how that should be done or could be done. People deal a lot easier with us being sad than they do about us being freaking in a rage, like, but it's just as necessary to go through if we've separated ourselves, if we've Neptune denied ourselves that part of who we are. We have to reclaim it on some level. Yeah.
Yes, and also I would say really grieve what's going on. Really allow yourself to grieve, because there are apparent huge forces coming at you from outside, Uranus, Neptune, and Mars, and 12th house, 10th house, it's all out there kind of thing. And life is not always easy, it's not always nice. And so really grieve that, really grieve it. And also do something for others. You have this Mars in the 4th house, beautiful, empathetic, you're a spiritual warrior. So really do something for others and protect others, and get out there and do something, like look after the animals or take on a cause or something like that.
Yeah, Mars always does best when it has something meaningful to go after, So it's like, I've talked about this before recently, but we spend so much time talking about what we don't want and what we don't like. The healthiest Mars is one that knows what it wants or needs to do and puts all its energy into that. It's almost like you just say, you know what? I'm not going to focus on all those other things. I've got my mission and here's what it is. And so, and certainly with it being in the 12th house, finding ways to help others, to be that spiritual warrior is huge. But I always, with myself, sometimes I think, okay, Mars really does need something to go for. And with Mars retrograde, sometimes we haven't always been, any of us that have Mars retrograde, we've been out of touch sometimes with what we actually desire, what we actually want, what we want to go for, or in past lives, we weren't able to go after what we wanted to go for. So there's frustration underneath that, right? And so when you can start to get in touch with what really does matter to you, and you put your Mars on a mission, that has real meaning to it, it's almost like some of these things coming from the outside, they just fall away because there's no room for them anymore. There's just energetically, there's no more room. Like you're so streamlined, and this is what I want, and this is what I'm going for with whatever you're helping, whatever intentional thing you're doing. Yeah.
And the Mars retrograde, the current Mars retrograde through your 5th house, by the end of that, you will really know what creative self-expression, self-expressive project you'd like to get into and focus on.
Yeah. So instead of worrying about, what we don't want, do what you do want to have happen. Mars is an active sign, and it initiates. It always does better when it can be the forerunner. So right now, based on this little question, this is a lot of like reactive stuff. Mars is better proactive. It just works healthier that way.
Okay, so do we have any others in the meeting who'd like to comment on this chart? Okay, Tara, anything more, or shall we wrap it up?
No, I feel like that was great. Thank you so much, everybody. And Linda, as always, it's always a pleasure. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Okay, that's been fantastic. Thank you so
Mm.
much, Tara. Would you all please unmute and thank Tara all, everyone?
Thank you, Tara. That was a godsend.
Thanks a lot, Tara.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.